According to Quantic Foundry, there are 6 main motivators as to why people play games. Here on Gaming Motivation, we try to take popular games and rate them so you know if they're a good fit for you. And if you want to know what motivates you to play video games, there's a link in the description so you can test yourself. Today we have Lethal Company, the best-selling Amazon warehouse simulator of 2023. Let's get right into it. Believe it or not, Lethal Company is a game where you do lethal work for a company. Your job as insert employee name here is simple. Every 3 days, management gives you a certain quota that you must meet. To do that, you and up to 3 of your coworkers must go moon to moon, exploring abandoned factories and mansions, all while looking for that sweet, sweet scrap. There's just one teeny tiny issue. Everything in Lethal Company wants to kill you. The bees will kill you, the environment will kill you, your own teammates will kill you, even the company itself will kill you. Ring the bell a few too many times while you're selling your scrap? Dead. Take a little too long to get back to the ship at night? Dead. Don't make enough money to meet your quota? You better believe that's a death. And this isn't even taking into account all the monsters both inside and outside of the facility that want nothing more than to mess your day up. The good news is that you aren't completely helpless in this game. You can use the money you make to buy a whole bunch of gear ranging from slightly delays the inevitable to good luck surviving without it. Most notably are some items like a stun gun to stun monsters or a shovel to do the big whack. But most monsters are extremely difficult if not impossible to kill. If you want to live, your best bet is to run away with whatever scrap you manage to gather. Because of this, Lethal Company is an extremely tense game since you constantly have to balance your need for scrap with the risk that you could suddenly die and lose everything you worked so hard to get. It might not be an action game in the normal sense, but I feel like the suspenseful aspect of Lethal Company more than makes up for it. I give action a 5 out of 5. While it is possible to play Lethal Company on your own, I would strongly recommend you don't for 2 reasons. First, the quota for scrap stays the same whether you have a full team or you're playing solo. In a game where your goal is to collect everything you can as quickly as you can, having another set of hands to help you carry your hard-earned loot back to the ship is extremely important. This is especially true since a lot of items will prevent you from picking anything else up while you have them equipped, regardless of if your inventory is full. Second, as I previously mentioned, everything in this game wants to kill you. Since your best bet at staying alive is to try to avoid the monsters altogether, that's where the eye in the sky comes in. On the ship, you have access to a screen that can monitor each player. If you leave someone on the ship, they can remotely open doors that other players can't, they can use teleporters to bring people to and from the ship, and they can even tell the others where the monsters and treasure is. But even with all that help, you're still going to die. A lot. Worst case scenario, if everyone on the facility dies, then the player on the ship can escape, allowing you to at least keep all the scrap you got so far. Best case scenario, your teammate gets eaten by a monster, which gives you a couple precious seconds to escape. Teamwork is an integral part to succeeding at Lethal Company, and for that I give Social a 5 out of 5. Starting off, I thought Lethal Company was an extremely difficult game. I spent a solid hour or 2 just dying constantly because I had no idea what I was doing. However, after you encounter each monster a couple times, then you start to learn their weaknesses. The large dogs are deaf and they only attack people who make noise. The brackens will leave you alone if you look at them for a few seconds, and the bees won't attack you as long as you don't go near their hive. Because of this, there isn't really much to master in this game. In terms of strategizing, the biggest choice you make in Lethal Company is deciding which moon and weather condition you want to endure in the next mission. Until you actually get into the facility and see what monsters are in there, you have no way of really preparing for what you should do. You just have to be ready to react to whatever you find inside. And it's not like the controls themselves are all that difficult either. You can move, jump, and use items. Most of the items are pretty self-explanatory too. You can climb with a ladder, a flashlight gives you light, and the teleporters for bringing your dead friends back to the ship after they fall in a pit for the 100th time. Although Lethal Company is a bit difficult to get into in the beginning, the game rewards reactive gameplay and there aren't any complicated game mechanics to learn or any hardcore strategies you need to succeed. For that, I give Mastery a 2 out of 5. If we're taking this category literally, Lethal Company has no achievements and it gets a 1 out of 5. But if we're talking about actual completion and the growth our characters can achieve in the game itself, I'd still give the game a 1 out of 5. There is only one goal you have each and every time you load into the game. You want to make enough money to meet the company's quota. Every time you meet the quota, you will only ever be met with higher and higher quotas to fill until you inevitably miss one and are evicted into space. There is no way to complete this game. There's no persistent upgrades to help you on future attempts, and aside from the data logs that I'll talk about in a bit, there's nothing that you can really collect in the game. You could try and make your own goals, like trying to get one of every piece of scrap in the game or trying to get as many cosmetic pieces of furniture as possible, but the game itself doesn't offer much for players to do. If you're someone who always loves to work towards something or to always have the progress mean something, then Lethal Company likely isn't the game for you. I give Achievement a 1 out of 5. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, Lethal Company is not immersive in the slightest. Don't get me wrong, the graphics in this game look extremely stylized and cool, even though some monsters look a tad derpy. The sound design here is also amazing. I love how your voice can echo throughout the valleys and how you can hear the faint sounds of your teammates through the walls in the facility. Wait, I have lore to dump.
Nope.
However, that's not what immersion means here. A big part of immersion is being able to insert yourself into the universe of the game you're playing. Immersion means meeting different characters and feeling a bond with them, or exploring a universe and feeling like you're actually inside of a thriving world that you can directly impact. When you're playing Lethal Company, there's no overarching narrative and no other NPCs to interact with. You could argue that there's a sort of in-game lore found on the couple of data chips you find on all the moons, and you're technically right. By reading the data chips, you find a log of a group of workers that came before you, written by someone named Sigurd. Here they detail some of their findings on their previous missions, including their belief that your real job for the company is to use the scrap you find to feed a mysterious creature on the company's planet. However, I have two issues with this. First and foremost, Sigurd isn't exactly the most reliable narrator. In a log titled Screams, Sigurd talks about how you can hear the screams all the time in the walkie-talkie while you're at the wall of the company building, yet when you go and try it yourself, you hear nothing. In Sound Behind the Wall, he also talks about how the going rate for scrap hit 120%, which is also impossible in the game. Second, if there is a creature in the company building that is eating all the scrap, then we can assume that the objects that are worth more credits will satiate the monster more than objects that are worth less. If that's the case, then why is a human body only worth 5 credits? And why do some objects have such wildly different costs? I understand that a jar of pickles can have different prices, maybe someone got hungry and ate a couple, maybe they expired, I don't know. But are you telling me that a rubber duck can be either 2 or 100 credits? What makes a pristine duck 50 times more desirable by the creature than a dirty old duck? What possible way will the game explain all these contradictions? The answer is simple, it doesn't. The lore of Lethal Company, in my opinion, doesn't really make sense, and it breaks the immersion when you compare it to the gameplay. And to be honest, part of me wishes that it didn't exist. There shouldn't be a large and impactful story here because there doesn't need to be a story. There shouldn't be any real connection to your character because they're expendable. Not every game needs to have tons of hidden lore and intrigue to make a good game, and I feel like Lethal Company demonstrates this perfectly. I give the immersion a 1 out of 5. In terms of customization, there's a decent amount you can buy. There's always a list of cosmetic furniture that you can buy for the ship. Each time the quota resets, the stock changes too, so you're never stuck with the same furniture for long. You can also buy different colored suits so you can finally tell each other apart, which is a nice touch. In terms of discovery, Lethal Company is procedurally generated, meaning that the game is mostly random. Outside of the facility, there's a general layout that always stays the same no matter how many times you visit, like the location of the entrances to the facility. Less important objects like pumpkins, boulders, and bees can randomly move around the map though, making the trek to the facility slightly different and possibly way more difficult each time. However, the main difference is inside of the facility. Each interior is random, making exploring much more rewarding since the monsters, amount of scrap, and overall layout differentiate every single playthrough. Personally, I think this makes the game a lot more interesting. Sometimes we had a mission in a large facility where we never saw a single monster. Other times we spawned in only to immediately come face to face with near instant death. While this did get annoying at times, I didn't mind too much since this unpredictability is what makes the game so fun. I will say that it does get a little boring exploring the same couple of rooms over and over. And while the developer is planning on adding some more map variety in the next update, there is something else we can do. If you pay money to fly to the hardest moons in the game, you gain access to a brand new interior called the Mansion. When you enter the Mansion, there's a lot more rooms that you can explore with a ton of really good loot inside. The trade-off is that there's a couple of extremely difficult monsters that only spawn on these harder moons. With the new scenery, new loot, and new monsters, the Mansion is a nice change of pace from the dark metallic hallways that you've grown used to. Unfortunately, since it costs a lot of money to fly to these moons, and since we suck at the game, I spent a lot of my time stuck on that basic facility on the easy planets. As a procedurally generated game, Lethal Company can't promote the exact same feeling of discovery as games with deliberate level design, but it still provides enough randomness to make each exploration new and exciting. I give creativity a 4 out of 5. Lethal Company is probably one of the most fun games I've played in a long time, and it is extremely impressive that most of the work was done by one developer. If you're a fan of tense and hectic gameplay as you work together with your teammates to explore new and dangerous areas to try and retrieve some scrap, then Lethal Company is definitely the game for you. The game's controls aren't too challenging, there's no real long-term strategy, and there's no deeper meaningful plot here, but I think that's okay. Not every game has to be a cinematic masterpiece, and although you'll die a lot at the very beginning, I think the game is rather easy to learn and get into. My only real warning about this game is that there isn't much to work towards except for reaching the quota, so if you solely like playing games because you like to grind out goals, you should look elsewhere. For everyone else, Lethal Company is definitely worth every cent of the $10 I paid for it. Anyway, I hope to see you guys again next time. Peace out.